Welcome to the Modern Ministry Podcast, where key issues in contemporary ministry are discussed. The Modern Ministry Podcast is a weekly podcast put on by the John W. Rawlings School of Divinity at Liberty University. Our school exists to come alongside the local church in its quest to fulfill the Great Commission, and we hope that the content here in this podcast helps you do just that.
Well, Solomon, I really appreciate you being with us here on the Modern Ministry Podcast here at the School of Divinity at Liberty, and I can't tell you how excited I am just to hear about your journey with Salt Network and what God is doing now, to know that. So thanks for taking some time to be with us.
Well, thank you for having me.
I
Love
appreciate
it out here.
that. Let's just jump right in. Tell us where you are right now and where you're headed.
Yeah. So right now, I live in Ames, Iowa, and I'm the director of Salt Company. We reach students at Iowa State University, part of a church called Cornerstone Church. We're the college ministry of that church. Been there for almost 6 years now.
Okay.
And the Salt Company in Ames is actually the first salt company started by the founder, Troy Nesbitt. And we, at our kickoff, had over 1,800 students. We have about 300 student leaders, 24 staff, full-time staff. And so my job is primarily to lead that staff and to preach at our gatherings. But it's really been a great ride these last 6 years.
That's awesome. So the mascot there in Ames, Iowa is a Hawkeye, is that right? Or?
No. Cyclones.
It's the Cyclones.
Yeah,
I know. I was baiting it a little
Yeah.
bit. So so the Cyclones. So I know you're a Duck. So
That's right.
How does that come together? I mean,
Yeah.
from Oregon to Iowa State there, and
Yes. Yeah, born and raised in Eugene, Oregon.
Okay.
Actually, a fourth generation Eugenian. My great-grandpa moved there when he was younger. And I went to the University of Oregon, studied accounting there. Never really got involved actually in college ministry while I was a college student. And then graduated, went to seminary, came back to Eugene to start a college ministry there.
Right.
So I did college ministry in Eugene at the U of O for about 5 years.
Okay.
And then through a couple mutual friends that I'm so thankful for, I was able to have the opportunity to come out to Ames, Iowa and lead the salt company in Ames. But now over the last few years, we started talking about what could it look like for me to actually go back there and not just start a college ministry, but actually start a local church that reaches college students.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're going to do this summer and fall. We're going to go back and plant a church.
so not only are you going back to your alma mater, you're going home.
That's right.
And so, Scripture, everybody wants to tell us, you shouldn't go back home and plant a church. We've had conversations on this podcast and in previous episodes with some leaders that have planted in their hometown, and we've challenged that narrative. Have you seen or heard people caution you about doing that, or found just it's overwhelming encouragement?
I haven't heard much of that actually.
Okay,
So
good.
I'd love to hear.
Good.
Hear a little bit about it. I think I can see some of the challenges that would come
Right.
alongside of that, but there are also some blessings there. Like I have a
Absolutely.
built-in community,
Right.
a landing spot of
Absolutely.
family and lifelong friends who are going to be there to be part of the church from day one, to bring families. So we're not just a collegiate church. We'll actually have
Right.
a lot of kids and families there. Our launch day. So I think there's definitely going to be some challenges going back. A prophet has no honor in his hometown. I think that's in the Bible somewhere.
That's it, yeah.
I'm hoping that's not the case. That was Jesus. I'm hoping that's not the situation here, that actually we have favor as we go back there and are able to capitalize on a lot of the connections I already have there and really plant a healthy, multi-generational church that reaches the next generation.
Yeah, I think you will. I think what we have seen in many situations, not all, we've seen in many situations, is that you have one or two perspectives when you go back to the place where you grew up. One is they know all about you, and it's the stuff you don't tell anybody else. And sometimes that can be used to a disadvantage, and the devil will use those things for discouragement. But I also think that those same conversations are opportunities to tell a redemptive story. No matter who you are. There's the long story of us not being who we once were. That's the story of every believer. That's the process and the life lived, seeing God work out sanctification and growing us and shaping us to be more like Him. And so I think, honestly, if I had the opportunity at that season of life to go back to my hometown in Charlotte, North Carolina, I would jump on it. I love that place. I love the people there. and the culture. And there seems to be, when you go back home, a natural connection point to where there is some of the greatest need.
Right.
And
yeah, since, I know the city, I know the different
Right.
pockets of the community. Plus,
Yeah.
Eugene it's big, but it's not huge.
Right.
And so growing up, my dad always told me he knows everybody and I can't get away with anything. So I don't have too many of those dark stories
Yeah.
growing up. And so hopefully we can just capitalize on the
Yeah.
people I know and the places I know inside of Eugene to
good.
reach people
That's
for the
good.
gospel.
So you're headed back. What's the target date for everything?
We're
in
hoping to
Eugene?
leave Ames around June, get there, early July, and probably start services in September, both on the community side and the campus side. Because of the class schedule, we'll probably start our Sunday services first, and then a few weeks later start our midweek college service.
Okay.
But yeah, September is kind of our goal date for getting things up and running.
Yeah. So what kind of team roles are you looking at, or do you feel are the most crucial for the
Yeah.
early stages of that launch?
Yeah. Well, we have multiple layers of teams. So maybe to start with is like a staff team.
Right.
We have this thing called the Core of Four, which is basically a lead pastor, a worship pastor, and then a guy and a girl to work on the Salt Company staff to reach college students. So we're kind of disproportionately weighted on our staff team toward reaching college students because that's what we're about.
That's the priority, right.
Yeah, a lot of our church plans go out with more than that. We'll actually go out with probably 6 or 7 in our initial staff team. So that's one team. Another team is our launch team, and that's going to be the graduating students who are looking for jobs in business and engineering and teaching. And we say, hey, why don't you get a job in Eugene in a place that is now strategic for the gospel?
Come on.
Come with us.
That's what I'm
get a
talking
teaching
about.
job there, and let's start this church together.
Yeah.
And so our launch team, we're hoping to get 20 to 40, maybe even more. We'll see.
Yeah.
And then there's something else I would even call like a landing team. And that's the people that I already know in Eugene. Now, a lot of our church plants don't have that, but the people that will go and, some of our close family and friends who will be there to help us get things running, they're the ones who've been local for a long time, and they'll help us reach people as well. So those are kind of the 3 teams I think about: staff team, launch team, and then our landing
Boy, I'm
team.
getting excited just listening to it because just to be able to cast that kind of vision for students at a season of life when there aren't a lot of strings holding them down.
Yep.
There's a lot of expectations they have and probably desires for certain things, but God doesn't necessarily want them to put all of that aside because, yes, they want to. He needs them to take their MBA or their undergraduate business degree or marketing or nursing or education or all of the above and engage in that community as you guys plant this church. They can become thriving members of that church, contributing, but also be in the community in places you won't send staff members.
Right. Yeah. So we want them to come, and there will be some specific positions and things inside of the church that they can fill.
Right.
Lead a small group, help with kids.
That's right.
But one of the biggest pieces is they will embody the vision. They
That's right.
will create culture because they've been part of what we're doing out here in Ames, Iowa. And now they know what we're trying to build. And so they can be really important. It's not as tangible as,
That's right.
changing diapers, but it's just as important to come and
Somebody's
got
got to change those diapers.
Yeah, they're both very important. But to come and live out the values of
Yeah.
our church that they've been living inside of for the last 4 years.
That's right. That's right. Well, with that, I mean, what are some specific team roles that you're looking for as you move towards that plan?
Yeah, well, there's the staff team roles.
You mentioned the staff team roles.
Yeah, staff team. And then, we're going to ask for people to be small group leaders and helping with kids and setup and tear down and tech. We want people to give as they find a job, to be generous in giving, and all those roles are really important. I would say necessity for the establishment of a healthy church. And so those are some of the things that people will be stepping into.
How do you guys cast the vision to recruit people, to put this before them? What are some specific things you guys have done? I mean, this has been going on now since the mid-'90s, since 1994 specifically, I know, and on these campuses and with these church plants. So what do you do on a regular basis to cast vision before students, to give them just a glimpse of what God may be asking them to be a part of?
In some ways, what they're currently part of, they're part of Salt Company Names, and they're watching their friends get saved and get discipled and finding their calling in Christ. And so that's what they're experiencing. We're saying, hey, can you come with us to love the person you once were? Can you come help us find that freshman who doesn't? Sheep without a shepherd. Can you help us introduce that person to the shepherd? And so in some ways they're in the vision. It's pretty easy to cast the vision because they're living it every time they come to a connection group or our Thursday night gathering. So that's probably the biggest win. We also have an annual conference called the Salt Company Conference where we specifically talk about what would it look like to give 730 days, that's 2 years,
Right.
730 days to helping a church get started in a university center. And so we have a lot of different opportunities for when we can talk about it, but the conference that we have every year, that's probably the biggest one, where they get to hear from a lot of the planters around our network.
Yeah.
They get to see students in other universities and what it looks like for them. And so that is just like a great place to cast vision. They can just see it all around them.
Now, I know as a part of the SALT network, you just don't helicopter in solo and just land. There is a sending church. We call it an Antiochian ecclesiology from Acts chapter 13. So we know there are sending churches, and we know there's one main sending church, especially coming from Ames, that I'm sure is a part of that.
Yep.
What things has your sending church been doing to help you? And then what things do you think churches should be considering if they want to send out teams well?
Yeah, man, my sending church, Cornerstone, has done so much for me and for our team. So let me try to get through. I think I wrote down 10 things. Let me try to get through a few.
No, let's go. Buckle up.
The first one is just for giving me a job the last few years, where I have a place to learn and to serve, under leadership before I go out and lead my own thing, to be under leadership for a while.
Yeah.
I've had so much, educational support and pastoral support, just character development, so many things just by simply having a job inside of this church.
Absolutely.
While I'm preparing to plant. I'm in a connection group with our lead pastor, and it's specifically designed to, discover calling. My wife's part of it. And that's huge. That's every week. I have time with our founding pastor every week, just pastoral one-on-one mentoring support. I got marriage date nights where I get to talk about how my marriage and family is going.
Right.
This is all coming through our sending church. Generosity.
Yeah.
One of the ways I love how our lead pastor talks about this. He's like, when some people talk about generosity, they talk about money. When we talk about generosity, we're talking about money. So that's what I'm talking about. Like they are financially so supportive of what we're doing. It's almost mind blowing the amount of support that we're getting. Even systems like they'll kind of take care of our books for the first 2 or 3 years. So we can just focus on planting and meeting people, and we don't have to get into all the weeds of some of that.
Right.
Now, eventually we'll have to do that,
Yeah.
but they'll help us at the start of that. I've got transitional elders. We'll borrow some of the elders from Cornerstone for the first few years.
And is that at a distance?
Yeah, primarily,
Okay,
at
good.
a distance mostly.
Yeah.
We got training meetings. I get with my team every week, the staff team, and we'll bring in an expert on some topic. Maybe it's membership, or we're talking about finances, or I'll even bring in some local pastors from Eugene to tell us, hey, tell me about what's going on in the city right now. And so we do that every week. We've got our team plus some sort of guide to kind of give us their best stuff. I got monthly Zoom calls with some of the other planters in our network who are doing the same thing. We got 4 churches getting started in 2023.
Okay.
And so we're all on a Zoom call together, just sharing, hey, what are you doing right now? What are you learning? Because we're going through the same stuff.
Absolutely.
And then we even have like quarterly overnight stuff, retreats with some of the other pastors in our network. So I could probably go more. I'll stop there.
No, this is good.
To let you know, there's quite a bit. I'm receiving a lot of support. I'm so thankful.
I can tell. What's the curation process? I mean, the incubation process, should I say? What's the incubation process look like? So from the time the decision is made, church plant is going to happen to when you get to the city and the campus and you launch. Because what I'm hearing right there's a lot happening in that list you just gave that requires time, and there's no doubt you can't speed up that process, but much, and then you lose. So what does that look like?
Yeah. So our standard is to have a 2-year process.
Okay.
Occasionally it's longer or shorter. But in terms of like once it's decided, okay, you're going to plant a church, it's a 2-year process. And so usually, a church planter will actually come onto our Salt Company staff team. So they'll actually be part of our college ministry team. So they're meeting with students.
Right.
They're preaching at our Thursday night gathering. We have plurality in teaching. So I'm not preaching every week. I'm less than half the time actually.
Okay.
So they're in the preaching rotation. So students they're getting credibility with the students.
Right.
They're meeting with our lead pastor, getting discipleship. So over the course of 2 years, they can start fundraising, team building, the training with the team. They even usually in that first fall or early spring, they'll start to go on visits to see, now where am I going to plant? Because usually the decision to plant, well, it's always made before we decide where that person is going to plant. So we'll start to find the location. So those are a few of the things that happen over the course of that 2 years. We try to give them more flexibility in that second year to kind of start making more visits to that place, start connecting with the community there. But it's a 2-year process for most of us.
And I love hearing that, Saul, because in life in general, but especially in ministry, longevity begets enduring fruit that we can't manufacture any other way. And it sounds like with that kind of a process of about 2 years, what you're doing with the church planner and their team is you're allowing an established longevity feel, even though I know it's only 2 years.
Yeah.
But when you say 2 years, there are people who hear that and say, "Are you kidding me? We need a church here now. Just find somebody that knows the word, that loves God, that's ready to come preach to us." And what that yields in many situations is a church that it may start but won't last.
Right.
And so I love hearing the intentionality and the strength behind the wisdom that gets poured in and the time you guys give that church planner and that team to mature as a team and to grow closer to God together.
In some ways, our sending churches are kind of like, it's like a greenhouse where the church
That's a good
actually
word. Yeah.
starts in the sending church, and then the team begins to be. So when we plant a church, it's not stage 0. There may be already stage 1 or 2 in. Like there are a couple steps in. There's already, established systems and community. And so that's part of the thing. We're playing the long game. And we want to plant healthy churches. We're not just trying to plant churches fast. We're trying to plant them healthy.
That's right.
And so, we think the 2 years is a good time frame for that. Plus, that's building on 5 to 10 years of experience that they've already had in ministry. And so in some ways, we're more like a finishing school. We're not bringing in like a 22-year-old to plant a church right away. Now, he could definitely be part of planting a church, but our lead pastors are generally going to have a lot more experience than that.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, Saul, I really appreciate the time you've given us here on the Modern Ministry Podcast. We're excited about what God is doing with Salt Company on campuses everywhere, with the Salt Network and planting churches in those cities. And we're just looking for more opportunities to encourage our students here at Liberty and the School of Divinity and the whole university to even seek out those opportunities.
Yeah.
And we're going to keep pointing in that direction as well. And
hopefully
hopefully they can be a part of something that God has seen that's far bigger than they dreamed. And so I am so grateful for your time here and connecting with us today. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Keep praying for us. We're excited about our future too.
Absolutely.